Now on to today's or this week's session. First off, last week's session, we haven't lost entirely officially, so chance to render it. But in case you're wondering, it's not been posted because it hasn't been rendered. And that's the only one I've had an issue with. Unfortunately, it was a good one, but I don't think we lost it. One thing I want to talk about though in these coaching sessions is there's a ton of ideas I've gotten in directly and indirectly in the one-on-one coaching sessions that I've done with people. It's been about a year. And through these sessions, things that I've directly been able to say and work on with people that weren't necessarily part of the structure of the one-on-one. But then they come back to help people in general. But there's always, the point I'm making is there's always something that's helpful to everybody and then something that's really helpful to you more than it might be to the other 10 or 20 people or the other hundreds and hundreds of people. And that's how we're all different. And that's why those one-on-one sessions have been so great for the guys who've done it, but also me, because by teaching, you're learning. By teaching individuals, you learn a great deal. It's almost like I become in a way, well, as a coach, they're generally and always learning from their players, right? And becoming a better coach. It's called experience. And so I always write down when I do coaching sessions with the one-on-one individuals, I always write down things that we talk about that are light bulb moments that have helped them and that are helpful for a topic to go over. So it's very rich in subject matter, very rich to do it this way. So one of the questions I wrote down was this: are you even asking yourself questions? I can't find the chat button. Hold on, guys. You guys hear me okay? All right. So it's been rich in content, the one-on-one sessions and subject matter and ideas to talk about when we go through help me help you from kind of that perspective. And Mike, who's one of the guys, Mike B, one of the guys I've worked with, says that the verbal journals helped see a lot of things I never thought before that review. And it's because we don't know what we're thinking when we go back to review what we were thinking. And so that's where this line at the top here comes. Are you even asking yourself questions? What does that mean? Well, are you even subconsciously or front of mind saying, why am I getting long or why am I getting short? And why am I getting long or short here? Is that your progression? We talk about the word process, and that's your strategy, your idea, your setup, things that you're looking for, right? Are you even asking yourself those questions? Am I getting long? Why? Why am I getting long here? Why would I get out there? Why should I get out now? And sometimes you're asking yourself those questions when you're in a zone and you don't realize it, and that's great. Other times you're oblivious because it's your emotions that are making all the decisions. It's the last trade making your next trade. What does that mean? Your last trade was a loser. Your last trade beat you up. So your next trade is made because of what had happened from your previous trade. Your previous trade was actually one within your strategy and one you were supposed to take, but you're mad because it didn't work. So your next trade becomes something way outside of what you're supposed to do. You don't run yourself through progressions. And that's as one of the part of your progression is a checklist, asking yourself questions. And now you know you got the right answers. They have a pre-flight check that just is with the most simplest things that pilots go through for a reason. People that handle guns appropriately, they use the most simplest forms of safety you could ever imagine. Why? Because that's the most important. And always conscious and aware of what's going on. And then we open up a trading account and you allow yourself to get lazy. You allow yourself to make trades that are stupid. You allow yourself to make the same mistake again and again and again. You allow yourself to go back to eating the chocolate cake after 3 days, 3 months of good training, of good trading. You allow yourself to slip because you go back to not asking yourself questions anymore. Forget about, you could get into, are these the right questions or wrong questions, but you have to keep asking yourself questions. Am I taking this trade because I started this session and I didn't record a lot of that part, but I came in angry because what had happened come to my back door. So the most professional thing I could do was make sure I put anything on that was with super small size, because I knew that it was hard for me to check the emotions at the door. So either was not going to do it if that's the door, or I wasn't going to go through the door. Because again, I've been a victim of making emotional trades too often not to have learned from it. And so we do it whether you realize or not. And everybody has emotions or shares emotions different ways. All right, sorry about that. So you either have the professionalism. Here, people have a different way of showing their emotions. Some keep it in too much. People put it out too much. People let it build too much. They don't necessarily allow it to vent properly. And you have to know who you are so that you cut your size accordingly, not take that next trade. But why, in your review, are you long? Well, because I'm bullish. Why are you bullish? Now, if you got an answer to that, we're talking. But if you're mumbling and stumbling and you don't have an answer to simple questions, then you shouldn't be in the market. You shouldn't be in the trade. So start listing what questions that you need to make sure you're asking consciously or subconsciously. And obviously, those questions are going to be fitted to your strategy, your idea. And that could be your own personal checklist. Make it simple, as simple could be. Why you're long or why you're bullish, why you're long. It's that ready, aim, fire approach. Only why am I bullish? Because that's ready. Why am I aiming? And why am I firing? Ready is, are you bullish or bearish? What's your bias? Aim might be a particular support or resistance zone you're moving into. And fire might be, in the case of the puke tool, longs or shorts puking. Could be buyers coming in and can't get it to go up, sellers coming in and can't get it to go down. All the stuff that's taught throughout this program. Going backwards, aim could be in a zone and a magnet below. Ready could be a magnet above or below. Something simple like that, if that's what you use to create your bias or your opinion. it could be an overall general, I'm only going to play this market from the long side in bullish transition because it's strong amid all this unrest. Where Sunday going into Monday, I thought we would be down 30, 40, 50 points in the S&P. This morning, I thought wouldn't been a surprise if I opened things up and we were down 40 handles and I seen we were up 8 or 10. Like, wow, there's a lot of pent up demand to buy this thing. And then the reasons are investors reaching for yields because you can't get them in treasuries. They think that at some point the riots will be the other side of it and we'll get back to business again. I think there is a tipping point, though. The markets are not just going to keep holding on to these days after days after days of riots. And if they're getting worse, there's a problem. But getting back to your emotions, when you get emotional, what happens? You stop asking yourself questions. You stop asking yourself questions. And you need to get emotional at times, but keep it in check. You need to get mad and control your anger. Not let it bleed into your trades, not let it to skip over your questions. Some people don't even have questions, let alone forgetting to answer them or ask them. But when you're emotional, when you're mad, what do? You skip over some important steps in your process, in your progression. Think about you guys in this room, in this meeting today that are in law enforcement, or think about the danger when you were doing your police work if you skipped over a few questions. You did some stupid things, or you put your life in danger, or you put other people's lives in danger. That's why safety is so important and first when handling weapons or flying an airplane. They go over the simplest stuff and it's not monotonous. It's supposed to be, but in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't. So someone asks a question, why do people trade angry? Why do people do anything? The answer to a lot of questions of why people do things that are not smart, it's people being people. Period. There is no articulate way or great answer, philosophical answer to why people do things that are irrational. I think you'd be spending a lot of time trying to figure out all of it other than just trying to train yourself not to. Train yourself to minimize dumb behavior. Train yourself not to trade angry. Train yourself to ask questions. Train yourself to review. Train yourself not to tip your trading over because you had 5 great days and 1 bad day. Training is part of everything and anything that's done professionally. Especially the competition that's involved, right? So usually last, I wouldn't say couple weeks, maybe last week was more a psychological meeting. Today is certainly not just because it's important in trading, but where we're at right now. I mean, should be relevant because of this whole rioting and looting this is not someone else's problem. It's not millions of miles away. I cannot say that enough. It's at your back door, and it probably is going to affect everyone if it hasn't already. Don't let it affect your trading. Get better at not trading your emotions. We're checking them, as John said, at the door. And if you can't check them at the door, don't go through the door that day. And I think I agree in a way that you have to be a really highly trained person to check real emotions at the door. everybody has emotions, so you have to control them. You're not going to eliminate them. But when you have them starting to control your behavior, you have to recognize that and adjust. And I think that I know that, and asking questions of why you're long here will get you to start your checklist. And that's what I wrote down to begin this discussion was, and this came in part from a one-on-one session I was doing with someone when I'd ask them, well, why are you getting long there again? Why are you getting long? And why are you getting long there? Why are you getting long and why are you getting long there? If you don't have answers to those, maybe you shouldn't be getting long there, right? If those aren't quick answers to those questions, then maybe you shouldn't be getting long. But you got to ask them before you have a chance to answer them. You have to ask them before you have a chance to answer them. As John says, it's he's learned to check his emotions at the door. It's not easy, he says, but it can be done. And I agree. And if it's not totally detaching and divorcing yourself from those emotions, it's controlling them. It's flipping a switch and focusing on what's in front of you and then getting back to the other problems, to the other emotions. It's about being a pro. There's a question that someone had asked, and I want to cover it. It doesn't necessarily fit into this session, but it's important. If I see a lot of buyers and you want to be an aggressive seller, doesn't that make you somewhat skeptical about selling? No, not if price action is showing me a lot of buyers and price can't go up. Number one. Number two, if there's an aggressive or if there's a buyer down here, prices up here, this might be the reason why I'm bearish. This is the magnet, as we talked about with icebergs or resting bids and offers that are big. I don't want to get into the whole session into why it's a magnet because there's many sessions in these coaching sessions that cover that. So there's a lot of emotions outside of trading, let alone inside, once you open up and start throwing around your size, throwing around your opinion, throwing around your losses, your gains. People think that, trading is all about stress when you lose. No, there's stress when you make money too. There's work involved in making money and there's work involved in losing money. And there's also a lot that beats on you for throwing your opinion out there and being wrong. You have to be able to admit when you're wrong, and that's where social media is such a sewer. It's such a sewer because so much of it is taken over by people who will never, for the most part, admit that they're wrong, and they spread so much misinformation. You have to really get into that old saying: "Believe none of what you read, none of what you hear, and half of what you see." And I don't mean that literally, but you get my point. Believe none of what you read, none of what you hear, and half of what you see. In this day and age of social media, there's been so much just BS about this was happened or this store got looted, this store was looted, this store was looted. And none of it was the case. It was all rumor, never happened. But then there was real looting and anger and emotion. And so it's like a perfect storm with this. And the perfect storm is you not only have a lot of anger and frustration out there, but you have a lot of criminals who are opportunists. And then here's the other one that's bad. Everybody was been locked in for 2.5, 3 months, right? There's a lot of anxiety because of that. Here's another one. A lot of people aren't working. They've been laid off or fired because things haven't reopened fully. So think of that perfect storm. Why I'm telling people that if it hasn't come to your back door, it can. Don't be surprised. And most importantly, forget about having it affect your trading. Don't let it affect your well being. Protect yourself just like you protect your trading account and your risk and your position in a trade. That's what risk management is all about. You decided to get up in the morning and go outside. Well, you've taken risk. Now manage it. The price of poker goes up when there's all this unrest. Do not let it affect your trading. And I thought that that was important, and it is important today to make sure people know that because it will, even without you realizing it. And that's the most dangerous. It can affect your trading and leak into your trading, and you don't even realize it because everybody has a little anxiety and a little kind of the blood pressure's up a little bit, even if it's not in your back door. And the subconscious anger and emotion could sometimes be the worst because it's not identified. I knew right away I've been happy the last few days, and then last night was a tipping point. But my money is on the law abiding people, and yours should be too. So that was what I wanted to cover today. I'll do what I can to make sure last week's gets up. I just wanted to make this more about staying focused. The key simple questions. Your simple question doesn't have to be my simple question, but make a question out of your trade to start your progression. Make a question, 2 questions, 3 questions out of your trade so you're asking that every time you click the mouse. I'm going to buy it here. Well, why? Why? Be that 5-year-old kid that doesn't stop asking that question. Be very curious and never stop being curious as to why. That doesn't question your trade in a bad way. It just allows you to slide into a progression, slide into your track. Slide into your track so you're not doing things outside your bucket, which, by the way, was last week's session, and it was a good one. We won't lose it. We'll get it. Everybody's mad and frustrated, and everybody is going to get mad and frustrated when you trade and pick this business. Also, don't forget that there is no business where there is no anger, is no frustration, is no anxiety or hardships, or right? That's called retirement. And then you're anxious about something else. So, or you're anxious about your health. There's always something that provides or creates a challenge. And so don't, when you get into trading, say, oh, I just wish I did something else because that's easy, right? No, there's a lot of hardship and nonsense you have to deal with in any profession. And if anything is easy, it's generally not going to make you much money. And I agree, Dylan. Don't ask too many questions, but you got to have that one that leads to two. That's why I said there's only a couple that I wrote down. Why you long and why you long here? That's why I said don't question the trade, but ask a couple questions that make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. And then you won't even have to, like with pilots, you don't even have to. Um, Hold on. There's a. Not just the Washington Post. Washington Post story that came out. But definitely don't ask too many questions. Ask a couple important ones. And it's not something that just goes on the back burner when two pilots are ready to take 300 people up in the air, right? They run their checklist for a reason because what they're doing can be dangerous if the simple stuff isn't addressed. Man, just check off the simple stuff. Why are you long and why are you long here? Don't talk yourself out of it. And if you do talk yourself out of it, then you got a whole nother set of issues to work on called confidence. This is just to make sure that you're on the path you said you're going to be on, the trade that you said you're going to take, the setup you said you wanted to identify, right? Paul, who's been a long time trader back from the floor, says ego could keep us from answering these questions. That's right. It could keep us from asking the question, let alone answering them. You're always looking for a way or a reason to justify bad behavior. And you know you're adding to a loser, but you'll justify it. You know you're taking a trade outside your strategy, but you'll justify it. Going to those questions will create the accountability needed to make sure you're on the path that you're supposed to be on. People justify a lot worse things than taking a trade outside your zone. So if people could justify doing a lot worse things than taking a trade outside your zone, you could certainly justify taking a trade outside your zone. So be safe, guys. Be smart, and we'll see everybody in the trading room tomorrow.